Captain Minji pressed her back against the broken wall and closed her eyes for just a moment. The sound of death was everywhere. Explosions shook the ground under her feet. The screams of her soldiers mixed with the horrible clicking sounds. The enemies made when they killed. She had been fighting for 3 days without sleep, and her body felt like it was falling apart. She opened her eyes and looked at what was left of her command center. The building that had once been the pride of their world was now just pieces of broken stone and twisted metal. Smoke rose from holes in the roof where enemy fire had torn through. The walls were covered with burn marks and blood. Captain Minji called Lieutenant Hyunwoo from across the room. His voice was tired and scared. "We lost contact with the northern sector. The bugs broke through our last line." Minji nodded but said nothing. She had expected this news. The Nexus. Swarm had been eating worlds for months now. They moved like a wave of hungry insects, covering everything in their path. No one had ever stopped them before. No one had even slowed them down. She crawled to the broken window and looked out at the valley below. What she saw made her stomach turn. The enemy covered the ground like a living carpet. Millions of them moved together, their black shells shining in the red light of the burning city. They had 6 legs each, and mouths full of sharp teeth. Were as big as houses. Others were small and fast, jumping from building to building. "How many do we have left?" she asked. 3,000 soldiers, Captain, maybe less. 3,000 against millions. The math was simple and terrible. Even if every shot killed an enemy, even if every grenade destroyed 100 of them, it would not be enough. The swarm would wash over them like water over sand. "What about the evacuation ships?" Minji asked, though she already knew the answer. "Gone, Captain. The last ship left 2 hours ago. All the civilians are safe. Safe. At least that was something. The children and old people were flying away to other worlds, while the soldiers stayed to die. It was the right choice, but it felt heavy in her chest like a stone. Minji had 4 arms like all her people, the Vulcarians. 2 were human-like, and 2 were smaller and more flexible. She used all 4 to check her weapon and ammunition. She had enough bullets for maybe 20 minutes of fighting. After that, she would use her knife. After that, she would use her hands and teeth. "Captain," said Hyunwoo, "the fleet commander wants to talk to you." Minji took the communication device and pressed it to her ear. The voice that came through was old and tired, like her own. "Captain Minji, this is Admiral Sunho. I am sorry." "How long do we have, Admiral?" 18 minutes. After that, we begin the bombardment." 18 minutes. 18 minutes, her own people would drop bombs. From space that would turn the whole planet into melted glass. It was the only way to stop the swarm from taking the world and using it as a base to attack other planets. It was smart. It was necessary. It was also a death sentence for everyone still on the surface. "I understand," Admiral Minji said. "We'll hold them as long as we can. You've done well, Captain. Your people will remember." The communication ended. Minji looked around at her soldiers. They were young, most of them. Some were barely old enough to hold a weapon. They had joined the defense corps to protect their families and their world. Now they would die for it. She stood up and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Listen to me. 18 minutes, the fleet will begin orbital bombardment. Cannot escape, we cannot surrender. The swarm does not take prisoners. They only kill and eat." The soldiers looked at her with wide eyes. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Some looked ready to fight until their last breath. "But we can choose how we die," Minji continued. "We can die like warriors, fighting to the end. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for the evacuation ships to get further away. Every bug we kill is one less bug attacking the next world." She pulled out her weapon and checked it one more time. "Our children are safe because we stood here. Our people will live because we die here. That is enough. That is everything." A young soldier named Daeho raised his hand. "Captain, what if help comes?" Minji looked at him with sad eyes. "Help is not coming, Daeho. The nearest friendly fleet is 10 days away. We sent out distress signals, but no one answered. We are alone." Ground shook again as the swarm got closer. Through the broken walls, Minji could see the first wave of enemies climbing over the outer defenses. They moved fast, their claws clicking on the stone. Behind them came bigger ones, and behind those came ones so large they blocked out the sun. "Take your positions," Minji ordered. "Make every shot count. Make them pay for every meter." The soldiers spread out through the ruins. Some went to the upper floors, where they could shoot down at the enemies. Others hid behind broken walls and furniture. A few set up the last heavy weapons they had. Minji found her own position behind a pile of rubble. She could see the main approach where most of the enemies would come. Her rifle was old, but reliable. She had used it for 10 years, and it had never failed her. The first enemies appeared at the edge of the courtyard. They were the small, fast ones, moving in groups of 10 or 20. Minji waited until they were close enough that she could not miss, then opened fire. Her first shot took the head off one of them. Her second shot punched through the chest of another. All around her, the last battle began. The sound of gunfire filled the air. Explosions lit up the growing darkness. The soldiers fought with everything they had, but the enemies kept coming. For every one they killed, 10 more took its place. Minji fired until her rifle was empty, and grabbed another weapon from a fallen soldier. She fired that until it was empty too. The enemies were getting closer. She could smell them now, a sick, sweet smell like rotting fruit. "Captain," shouted Hyunwoo from somewhere to her left. "They are in the building." She looked at her watch. 15 minutes left, then 14, then 13. The end was coming fast. The sky above Captain Minji suddenly turned bright orange. She looked up from her position behind the rubble and saw something falling through the clouds. At first she thought it was another enemy ship. The swarm had been dropping their bioships all day, each one carrying thousands more of the horrible creatures. But this was different. The object falling from the sky had straight edges and smooth surfaces. It was not grown like the enemy ships. It was built, made by someone who understood metal and engineering. Fire trailed behind it as it cut through the atmosphere like a knife. "What is that?" shouted Hyunwoo from across the courtyard. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was still fighting. Minji did not answer because she did not know. The object was getting bigger as it fell toward them. She could see it was some kind of ship, but not like any ship she had ever seen. It was dark gray and had wings that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. The ship hit the ground in the center of the courtyard with a crash that shook the whole building. Dirt and pieces of stone flew everywhere. Mingi covered her head with her arms and waited for the dust to settle. When she looked up again, the ship was sitting in a crater it had made. Steam rose from its surface, and she could hear metal cooling and crackling. The ship had a door on one side, but it was closed. "Is it one of ours?" asked Daeho, the young soldier who had spoken earlier. He was hiding behind a broken wall about 10 meters away. "I do not think so," Minji replied. "I have never seen anything like it." The enemies had stopped advancing when the ship crashed. They stood at the edge of the courtyard, clicking and hissing at each other. Some of them moved closer to the ship, but they seemed careful, like they were afraid of it. Suddenly, the door of the ship opened with a hiss of escaping air. Steam poured out, and Mingi could not see inside. Then a figure stepped out of the steam, and she gasped. It was not Valkyrian. It was not like any species she had ever seen. The creature was tall, maybe 2 meters, and it stood on 2 legs like a Valkyrian. But it only had 2 arms, and its skin was smooth and pale. Its hair was black and straight, falling around its face. When it turned to look at her, she saw its eyes were dark and calm. "You are Valkyrian," the creature said, in perfect galactic standard. Its voice was deep and steady, not afraid at all. "I am Jinho, of the Terran Exploration Corps. We got your distress signal, Terran." Minji had heard stories about the Terrans. The humans from the outer edge of the galaxy. Most people said they were primitive, barely able to travel between stars. "You need to leave right now. This world will be destroyed in 12 minutes. Jinho looked around at the battle happening all around them. Swarm creatures were starting to move again, getting ready to attack the new arrival. He reached behind his back and pulled out a weapon that made Mingi stare in confusion. It looked like a bow, the kind of weapon that ancient peoples used before they learned to make guns. But this bow is different. It was made of metal and glass, and energy ran along its length in blue lines.
Ow.
It hummed with power that made the air around it shimmer. "How many soldiers do you have?" Jinho asked, as if he had not heard her warning about the orbital bombardment. "That does not matter," Mingi said. "You cannot fight them. There are millions of them." "How many soldiers?" Jinho asked again. His voice was patient but firm. 3,000, maybe less. "But listen to me, you have to get out of here." "My own fleet is going to bomb this place in 11 minutes. Jinho nodded as if this was normal news. "Good, 3,000 is enough." Minji stared at him. "Enough for what?" "Enough to hold the line while we work." Jinho touched something on his belt, and his voice was suddenly broadcasting to someone else. "Kuna Taeyong, start setting up the resonance equipment. Sunju, I need target data on the queen forms. Yunji, prepare the evacuation coordinates." More figures came out of the ship. Minji counted 5 more humans, all carrying equipment she did not recognize. They moved with purpose and speed, like they had done this many times before. One of them, a female with short black hair, looked at Minji and smiled. "Do not worry, Captain. We will have this cleaned up soon." Cleaned up? Minji could not believe what she was hearing. "Do you understand what you are facing? The Nexus swarm has destroyed 12 worlds. They have never been stopped. They have never even been slowed down." "There is always a first time," said another human, a male who was unpacking some kind of device from a metal case. "My name is Taeyong. I am an engineer. What we are seeing here is a coordination problem." "A coordination problem?" "Yes, the swarm works because they all follow the same leaders. Take out the leaders, and the followers do not know what to do." Minji watched as Jinho walked to the highest point of the ruined building. He moved like a hunter, quiet and sure. The bow in his hands seemed to glow brighter as he raised it. "The queen forms are 3 kilometers away," Minji called to him. "They are protected by millions of drones. No single weapon can reach them." Jinho did not answer. Instead, he pulled back the string of his bow, and an arrow appeared. The arrow was made of light and energy, and it sang as he drew it back. Sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Around the courtyard, the swarm creatures were getting closer. Some of them were only 50 meters away now. Minji could see their teeth and claws clearly. She could smell their sour breath. "Whatever you are planning to do, do it now," she said. Jinho released the arrow. The arrow flew from his bow like a shooting star. It moved faster than any projectile Minji had ever seen, but that was not the strangest part. The strangest part was how it moved. The arrow did not fly in a straight line. It curved around obstacles, went over and under things, somehow found a path through the chaos of the battlefield. Minji watched through her scope as the arrow traveled 3 kilometers in seconds. It passed through gaps between the swarm. Creatures too small for anything to fit through. It bent around their shields and armor. It moved like it was alive and knew exactly where it needed to go. Then it hit something at the center of the swarm, and the world exploded. A ball of fire rose from the enemy lines, bigger than any explosion Mingi had ever seen. The light was so bright she had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a crater where part of the swarm had been. Crater 1,000 meters wide. "One down," Jinho said calmly. He was already pulling back another arrow. "How many queens did your scouts count?" Minji stared at the destruction. Thousands of enemies had simply vanished. 12 queens total. "But how did you do that?" Practiced, Jinho said, and released his second shot. Another explosion lit up the battlefield. Another piece of the endless swarm disappeared, for the first time in days. Minji felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. Captain Minji climbed the broken stairs to reach Jinho on the highest floor of the ruined building. Her legs were shaking from exhaustion and fear, but she needed to understand what was happening. The human stood at the edge of the roof, looking out at the battlefield through some kind of device that covered one eye. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Buying time," Jinho replied without looking at her. He was holding his bow ready, another arrow of light already formed on the string. Your people need time to call off the bombardment. Bombardment cannot be called off, Minji said. The fleet has orders. 8 minutes. They will destroy everything on this planet. Then we need to show them the threat is handled. Ginho aimed at something far away that Minji could not see. How good are your fleet commanders at making quick decisions? They're practical people. They do not take risks. Good. Practical people change their minds when the facts change. Ginho released his third arrow, and another explosion bloomed. In the distance, this one was even bigger than the first two. The light was so bright it hurt to look at, and the sound came seconds later like thunder. Through her binoculars, Minji watched as a whole section of the swarm simply vanished. The creatures around the explosion scattered like leaves in a wind. For the first time since the battle began, she saw gaps in the enemy lines. How is this possible? She whispered. Each queen controls about 1 million drones, Ginho explained. Already preparing his 4th shot. The queens communicate with each other through quantum entanglement. When one dies, the others have to reorganize their networks. It creates confusion. Minji did not understand half of what he said, but she could see the results. The swarm creatures near the explosions were moving in circles, bumping into each other. Some of them had stopped moving entirely. Captain Minji, came Hyenwoo's voice. Through her radio, something is happening down here. The enemies are acting strange. I can see it, she replied. Keep fighting. Do not let them regroup. Below them, the other humans were working with equipment that looked like nothing Minji had ever seen. The female, called Yuna, was connecting cables to the ground itself, pushing them deep into the rock. Tae-young was setting up devices that made the air shimmer around them. Another human, Sung-ho, was looking at screens covered with numbers and symbols. Target acquired, Sung-ho called out. Queen number 4 is moving to position 77 Alpha. Ginho adjusted his aim slightly. Confirmed. Firing. The 4th arrow flew out in a path that made no sense. It went straight up into the air, then curved down and to the left. Then somehow went through a gap between 2 buildings that was barely wide enough for a person to walk through. It traveled over 4 kilometers and struck something that Minji could not even see. The explosion was different this time. Instead of a ball of fire, it was a column of light that reached up into the sky. When it faded, there was silence from that part of the battlefield. What was that? Mingi asked. Ammunition depot, Ginho said simply. The queens carry extra biomass for making new drones. When it explodes, it takes out everything in a wide circle. Captain Hyenwa's voice was excited now. Sectors reporting that the enemies are retreating. It's actually retreating. Mingi grabbed her binoculars and looked toward the north. It was true. The swarm creatures that had been advancing were now moving backward. Some of them were running away as fast as they could move their 6 legs. This is impossible, she said. The swarm does not retreat. They do not even understand the concept of retreat. Every species understands survival, said the human called Yunji, who had climbed up to join them. When the cost of attacking becomes higher than the benefit, even the swarm will recalculate. Captain Minji, her radio crackled with a new voice. This is Admiral Sunho. We are detecting massive energy signatures from your position. What is your status? Minji looked at Ginho, who was lining up his 5th shot. Admiral, we have new tactical options. Request delay of bombardment. Negative, Captain. We cannot risk the swarm escaping to other worlds. For minutes until bombardment begins. Admiral, the swarm is being neutralized. We have assistance from an unknown force. Unknown force? Captain, your reports are not making sense. Ginho released his 5th arrow, and another section of the swarm disappeared in a burst of light. The explosion was so large this time that Minji felt the heat on her face even from kilometers away. Admiral, she said into her radio, are you? Seeing this from orbit, there was a long pause. Captain, we are detecting energy releases equivalent to strategic nuclear weapons. How is this possible? I am not sure, Admiral. But the threat is being contained. While she was talking, Yuna had finished connecting her cables to the ground. She activated her equipment, and the whole building began to vibrate. It was not the random shaking of explosions. It was a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. What is that? Minji asked. We are teaching your planet to sing, Yuna said with a smile. Every world with intelligent life has a harmonic frequency in its core. We are amplifying it. Amplifying it. For what? So your fleet can hear it from space. They will know this world is still alive and worth saving. The vibration grew stronger, and Minji could feel it in her bones. It was not unpleasant. It felt like music, but music too deep for her ears to hear properly. Ginho fired his 6th arrow and his 7th. Shot found its target despite the distance and obstacles. Each explosion removed another piece of the swarm from the battlefield. Captain Admiral Sunho's voice came through the radio again. We are receiving some kind of harmonic transmission from the planet's surface. It is unlike anything we have ever detected. What kind of transmission, Admiral? It is beautiful, Captain. Complex mathematical patterns that suggest high intelligence. How is this possible? Minji looked at the humans working around her.
They
moved with calm efficiency, like they did this every day. Ginho had now eliminated 8 of the 12 queens, and the swarm was falling apart. Creatures that had seemed infinite and unstoppable were now confused and scattered. Admiral, she said, I recommend canceling the bombardment. The situation is under control. Captain, I need confirmation. Are you certain the threat is neutralized? Released his 9th arrow, and 3 queens died in a chain reaction of explosions. The light was so bright, it turned the sky white for several seconds. Admiral Minji said, watching the remaining swarm creatures flee in all directions, I am certain. All ships, this is Admiral Sanho, stand down from bombardment protocol. Repeat, bombardment is cancelled. For the first time in days, Minji allowed herself to breathe deeply. The impossible had happened. The swarm was retreating. Her world was saved, and these strange humans had done it all in less than 20 minutes. How? She asked Jinho as he prepared his 10th shot. We listen, he said simply. To the planets, to the patterns, to the things that connect all living beings. Your world was calling for help. We heard it and came. The 10th arrow flew toward the last concentration of enemies, and when it struck, the battlefield fell silent for the first time in 3 days. The war was over. Lieutenant Hyunhwa could not believe what he was seeing through his scope. The swarm creatures that had been attacking without stopping for 3 days were now moving away from the human positions. Some were running so fast their 6 legs were a blur. Others had stopped fighting completely and were just standing still, as if they had forgotten what they were supposed to do. Captain Minji, he called through his radio. The western sector is clear. The enemies have abandoned their positions. Confirmed. Came the reply from Captain Mingi. The same thing is happening everywhere. Swarm is in full retreat. Hyunhwa lowered his weapon and wiped sweat from his forehead. He had been fighting for so long that his hands were shaking from exhaustion. His ammunition was almost gone, and he had prepared to die fighting with his knife. Now suddenly, the battlefield was quiet except for the strange humming sound coming from the human equipment. Around him, other Valkyrian soldiers were emerging from their hiding places. They moved carefully, expecting the retreat to be a trick, but the swarm creatures were not coming back. They were moving further and further away, leaving their dead behind. This is impossible, said young soldier Daeho, looking through the broken window at the retreating enemies. The swarm never gives up. They fight until every last one of them is dead. Maybe they are not as unstoppable as we thought, replied Sergeant Borum, an older female who had been fighting longer than anyone else in the unit. Maybe they just never met anything that could hurt them before. On the roof above them, Jinho was preparing to fire his 11th arrow. The bow in his hands was glowing brighter now, and the air around him shimmered with heat. He had been shooting for 20 minutes without stopping, and each shot had found its target across impossible distances. From his position with the scanning equipment, Queen 11 is trying to reach the command ship in orbit. Not today, Jinho said, and released the arrow. This shot was different from the others. Instead of flying straight toward the target, the arrow went almost straight up into the sky until it was just a dot of light. Then it curved back down, moving faster than anything Hyunwoo had ever seen, It passed through the atmosphere like a meteor trailing fire behind it. The explosion when it hit was visible, even from space. A pillar of light reached up from the horizon, and the shockwave rattled windows that were still intact. When the light faded, there was a crater so deep that Hyunwoo could see the glow of molten rock at the bottom. Direct hit, Sung-ho reported. Queen 11 is eliminated. Only one target remaining, but something was happening to the last queen. Through his equipment, Sung-ho could see that it was not trying to fight anymore. Instead, it was calling to the orbital command ship, sending out signals of distress and confusion. It is asking for new orders, Taeyong said, looking up from his devices. The queen does not understand what is happening. The swarm has never faced this situation before. What situation? Asked Captain Minji, who had climbed down from the roof to check on her soldiers. Complete loss of command structure, Taeyong explained. The queens are not just leaders. They're the brain of the entire swarm. Without them, the drones cannot think for themselves. Yuna was still working with her equipment that was connected to the planet's core. The vibrations were getting stronger, and now Hyunwoo could hear them as well as feel them. It sounded like singing, but deeper and more complex than any music he had ever heard. The planet is responding well, Yuna said. The harmonic frequencies are stabilizing. Your world has a very strong life song. Life song? Minji asked. Every planet with intelligent life develops unique vibration patterns in its core, Yoonji explained. It is like a fingerprint, but made of sound and energy. Most species never notice it because they are too busy looking at the surface. But you noticed. Humans learned to listen to planets a long time ago, Jinho said, still watching for the final target. It taught us which worlds were worth saving and which ones were already lost. The planet's song was getting louder now, reaching up through the ground and into the sky. In orbit above them, the Vulcarian fleet was recording everything, Admiral. Sunho had never heard anything like it in 40 years of space travel. Captain Minji, the Admiral's voice came through the radio. What is happening down there? This harmonic signal is unlike anything in our databases. The humans call it a life song, Admiral. They say it proves our world is still alive and worth. Saving it is beautiful, the Admiral said quietly. I can feel it in my bones even up here. How is this possible? Before Minji could answer, alarms started going off on Sung-ho's equipment. The last queen is making a run for it, he announced. It is heading for the northern escape route at maximum speed. Ginho raised his bow for the final shot. This time, he took longer to aim. Target was moving fast and trying to hide behind the fleeing drones. But Ginho had been tracking it for several minutes, learning its movement patterns. Target acquired, he said softly. The final arrow left his bow like a shooting star. It flew low over the battlefield, weaving between obstacles and around fleeing enemies. It followed the queen as she tried to escape, matching her speed and direction. When she tried to hide behind a group of large drones, the arrow simply curved around them. The queen had almost reached the safety of the forest. When the arrow caught up with her, the explosion was smaller than the others, but it was enough. When the light faded, the last queen of the swarm was gone. Instantly, every remaining swarm creature on the planet stopped moving. They stood perfectly still for a moment, as if listening for orders that would never come. Then, slowly, they began to settle down where they were. Some of them curled up like sleeping animals. Others simply stood motionless, waiting for commands. From queens who were no longer there, "It is over," Jinho said, lowering his bow. "The swarm is neutralized." Hyunwoo looked out at the battlefield and saw something he had never expected to see. Thousands of swarm creatures were just sitting peacefully. In the grass, they were not attacking. They were not destroying anything. They looked almost like domestic animals waiting for their owners to come home. "What happens to them now?" Minji asked. "They will enter hibernation mode within a few hours," Taeyong said. "Without queens to guide them, they cannot function. Your people can study them safely or relocate them to uninhabited worlds." "Captain," Admiral Sunho's voice came through the radio again. "We are detecting massive changes in the energy signatures planet-wide. The swarm appears to have ceased all hostile activity," confirmed Admiral. "The threat has been completely neutralized. This is impossible. No force in the galaxy has ever stopped the swarm before." Minji looked at the humans who were already packing up their equipment. They worked with calm efficiency, as if saving worlds from impossible threats was something they did every day. "Admiral," she said, "I think we need to update our files on human capabilities." Around the battlefield, Valkyrian soldiers were cheering and embracing each other. They had survived the impossible. Their world was safe. Their families would live to see another day. But Hunwoo was watching the humans and thinking about what he had seen. These people had technology that seemed like magic, but they used it to save lives instead of taking them. They had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers without asking for anything in return. "Why did you come?" asked Jinho, as the human walked past. Jinho stopped and looked at him with those calm, dark eyes. "She called for help," he said simply. And humans always answer when someone calls for help. The war was over, but Hunwoo had a feeling that the real story was just beginning. Admiral Sunho stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the planet through the main viewing screen. He had been a military commander for 30 years, and he had seen many strange things in space. But nothing had prepared him for what was happening now. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "the harmonic transmission from the surface is getting stronger. It is unlike anything in our databases." The sound was coming through the ship's speakers now, filling the bridge with music that seemed to come from the planet itself. It was deep and complex, with layers of melody that changed and shifted like a living thing. Some of his crew members had tears in their eyes just from listening to it. "How is this possible?" the Admiral asked. "Planets do not make music." "According to the humans, sir, they do," replied his science officer. "I have been analyzing their communications with Captain Minji. They claim that all worlds with intelligent life develop harmonic frequencies in their cores, and we never noticed this before. We never knew to listen for it, Admiral." Down on the surface, Yuna was monitoring the equipment that was amplifying the planet's natural song. The readings on her screens showed patterns that would have taken most scientists years to understand. But humans had been studying planetary harmonics for decades. "The resonance is perfect," she told Captain Minji, who was watching over her shoulder. "Your world has one of the strongest life songs we have ever detected. It has been singing for thousands of years, waiting for someone to hear it. But why can we hear it now?" Minji asked. "Why never before?" "Because your people were always too busy fighting wars to listen," Yunji said gently. "War creates noise that drowns out the quiet songs. Peace makes space for beauty." Ginho had finished packing his bow and was now helping Taeyong dismantle the targeting equipment. The battle was over, but there was still work to do. The dormant swarm creatures needed to be contained, and the planet's infrastructure needed to be repaired. "Captain Minji," he said, "your fleet commander wants to meet with us. Will you arrange a transport to the flagship?" "Of course," Minji replied. "But I have a question first. How did you know to come here? You sent distress signals to every friendly force in the sector, but no one answered except you." "We were not in this sector when you sent the signal," Jinho explained. "We were 3 star systems away, exploring a dead world. But when your planet started calling for help, we heard it." "The planet was calling? All living worlds call out when they are in danger," Yuna said, still working with her equipment. "It is an automatic response, like a heartbeat speeding up when the body is threatened. Most species cannot hear it, but humans learned to listen a long time ago, Lieutenant." Hunwoo was helping to round up the dormant swarm creatures. They were completely harmless now, just sitting or lying where they had stopped when the last queen died. Some of his soldiers were afraid to go near them, but the creatures did not react to anything. "It is strange," he said to Sergeant Borum. "Yesterday these things were trying to kill us all. Now they look like sleeping pets." "The humans say they are like tools without anyone to use them," Borum replied. "Without the queens to give them orders, they do not know what to do." "What will happen to them?" "Captain Mingi says we will keep them sedated and study them. Maybe we can learn how to defend against them if they ever attack other worlds." Up in orbit, Admiral Sunho was preparing to receive the human delegation. He had ordered his best conference room to be prepared with translators and recording equipment, but he was nervous. These humans had just done something that every military expert said was impossible. "Admiral," his aide said, "the human transport is requesting permission to dock." "Granted. And send word to the Council of Worlds. They need to know what happened here." The human transport ship was small and sleek. nothing like the massive warships that most species used. It docked so gently that the Admiral barely felt the connection. When the airlock opened, 5 humans stepped aboard his ship. Jinho was the first to enter, followed by the others. They moved with quiet confidence, not like conquerors, but like visitors. They wore simple clothes and carried no visible weapons. Admiral Sunho Ginho said with a slight bow, "Thank you for allowing us aboard your ship. I am Jinho of the Terran Exploration Corps." "The thanks are ours," the Admiral replied. "You saved our world and our people. How can we repay such a debt?" "There is no debt," Ginho said simply. "We helped because you needed help. That is what neighbors do." The Admiral led them to the conference room where his senior officers were waiting. The humans sat down without ceremony, and Yuna placed a small device on the table that projected a 3-dimensional map of the planet. "The immediate threat is over," she said. "But there are things you should know about what happened here." "Please, tell us everything," the Admiral said. "The swarm is not evil," Taeyang began. "They are a tool created by an ancient species that died out millions of years ago. The queens are organic computers, programmed to spread and consume resources. For masters who no longer exist, they have destroyed so many worlds," one of the officers said. "Because no one ever taught them to stop," Yanji replied. "They follow their original programming without understanding that their creators are gone. Today we showed them that their programming can be interrupted." "How?" the Admiral asked. "By demonstrating that there is a higher authority than their Queens," Jinho explained. "The planetary songs represent the collective will of all intelligent life on a world. When a planet sings loudly enough, even the swarm recognizes it as a voice that must be obeyed." Yuna activated another display that showed wave patterns and energy readings. "Your planet is now broadcasting a protection signal that will warn other swarm fleets to stay away. As long as the song continues, they will recognize this world as claimed territory." "Will other planets be able to do this?" the Admiral asked. "With help, yes," Yuna said. "We can teach your people how to listen to planetary songs and how to amplify them when needed. It is not difficult once you know what to listen for." The Admiral looked around at his officers. They were all thinking the same thing. If humans could teach this knowledge to other species, it could change everything. The swarm had been terrorizing the galaxy for years, forcing entire civilizations to flee their homeworlds. Oh, there might be a way to fight back. "What do you want in return for this knowledge?" he asked. "Nothing," Jinho said. "We share knowledge freely. That is how species grow and learn together. But surely there must be something. Trade agreements, territorial rights, military alliances." "We would like to learn about your people and your culture," Yangji said. "And we would like permission to study the dormant swarm creatures, so we can better understand how to help other worlds defend themselves." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. In his experience, powerful species always wanted something in return for their help. Territory, resources, political influence. But these humans seemed genuinely interested only in helping and learning. "There is something I do not understand," he said finally. "Your technology is clearly far advanced beyond ours. Your weapons are more powerful than anything we have seen. Why do you travel in small ships and call yourselves an exploration corps instead of an empire?" Jinho smiled, and the expression made him look younger and more human. "Because empires are for people who want to control things. We prefer to discover things. There is so much beauty in the galaxy that we have not seen yet. So many songs we have not heard. Why would we waste time trying to rule when we could be learning instead?" The planetary song was still playing through the ship's speakers, and the Admiral found himself listening to it with new understanding. It was not just noise or even just music. It was the voice of his world, singing of life and hope and the determination to survive. "We would be honored to learn from you," he said. "And we would be honored to learn from you," Jinho replied. Outside the conference room windows, the planet continued to sing its song of life, and the stars listened. 3 days after the battle, Captain Minji stood in what had once been her command center. The building was still damaged, but human and Valkyrian engineers were working together to repair it. She watched as Taeyang showed her people how to build communication devices that could detect planetary songs. While Yuna taught them to read the harmonic patterns that every living world produced, the work was going faster than anyone had expected. The humans did not just give orders or hand over finished technology. Instead, they worked alongside the Valkyrians, teaching them step by step how to build and understand the new equipment. "Captain," said Lieutenant Hunwoo, approaching with a data pad in his hands. "The Council of Worlds wants to speak with you. They are calling what happened here the miracle of Valkara Prime." "It was not a miracle," Minji replied, watching Jinho help a group of young soldiers learn to calibrate harmonic sensors. "It was just people doing what people do when they refuse to give up." More human ships had arrived during the past 3 days, but they were not warships. They carried scientists, teachers, and engineers. The humans came to share knowledge and learn about Valkyrian culture, not to conquer or control. Dr. Subin, a human xenobiologist, was working with Valkyrian scientists to study the dormant swarm creatures. They had learned that the creatures could be safely awakened and even taught simple tasks, as long as they were not given access to Queen-level intelligence. "It is remarkable," Dr. Subin explained to a group of Valkyrian researchers. "Organisms are not naturally aggressive. They were designed to be perfect workers and soldiers, but without hostile programming, they are actually quite gentle." "Could they be used to help rebuild damaged worlds?" asked Dr. Youngmi, a Valkyrian biologist. "Possibly. We would need to be very careful about how we program them, but yes. They could help with construction, farming, or environmental restoration." In the makeshift laboratory they had set up, human and Valkyrian children were working together on a project to map the songs of different planets. The human children taught the Valkyrian ones how to use harmonic detection equipment, while the Valkyrian children showed the humans how to interpret the emotional content of planetary music. "Your world sings about hope," said a human child named Minho to his new Valkyrian friend Ji-woo. "What does your world sing about?" Ji-woo asked. "Curiosity," Minho replied. "Our planet is always asking questions. It wants to know what is beyond the next star." Captain Mingi found Ginyo standing on the observation deck that had been built on top of the repaired command center. He was looking out at the valley where the battle had taken place. The scars were still visible, but new grass was already growing in the crater where the swarm queens had died. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with your people," she told him. "They want to learn everything about planetary harmonics and swarm psychology." "We will share what we know," Jinho said. "But they should understand that this knowledge comes with responsibility. Planetary songs are sacred. They should not be used for war or profit." "What will you do now?" he asked. "Will you stay and help us rebuild?" "Some of us will stay for a while to make sure the knowledge transfers properly, but most of us will continue exploring. There are many worlds out there that need help, and many songs we have not heard yet." Minji looked down at her people working with the humans. Valkyrians and humans were laughing together, sharing meals, and teaching each other new skills. It was the first time in years that her world had felt truly peaceful. "I have a question," she said. "Your technology is so advanced. Your understanding of the galaxy so deep. How long have humans been traveling in space?" "About 200 years, Jinho replied. 200 years? Minji was shocked. "We have been spacefaring for over 3,000 years. How did you advance so quickly?" "We learned to listen," Jinho said simply. "While other species were building bigger weapons and faster ships, we were learning to hear the voices of planets and stars and living beings. The galaxy teaches us everything we need to know if we pay attention. But your weapons, your ships, your technology, all based on natural principles we learned from listening to the universe. Your bowstring makes music when you pull it back. A planet makes music when life grows on it. A star makes music when it burns. We just learned to hear these songs and work with them instead of against them." Dr. Yunji joined them on the observation deck, carrying a tablet with readings from the planetary monitoring stations. "The song is stabilizing beautifully," she reported. "Your world will be protected from swarm attacks for generations to come." "Will other worlds be able to learn this protection?" Minji asked. "Yes, but each world's song is different. We will need to visit each one and help them find their own voice. It will take time, but it can be done." "How many worlds need help?" "Hundreds," Yanji said. The swarm has been active for decades, but now that we know how to stop them, we can teach every world to defend itself. A message came through Minji's communication device. It was from Admiral Sunho, still in orbit above them. Captain, we have received responses from 17 different star systems. They all want to learn about planetary harmonics. Some of them are worlds that have been hiding from the swarm for years. What did you tell them? Minji asked. I told them to expect human teachers within the month. The word is spreading faster than we expected. Ginho smiled at this news. Good. Fear should not force people to hide. Every world deserves to sing its own song. As the sun set over the valley, the planet's song grew stronger and more complex. It was no longer just a song of survival or hope. Now it was a song of friendship, of two species learning from each other, of knowledge shared freely across the stars. You know, Minji said to Jinho, when I saw you step out of that ship, I thought all hope was gone. I thought we were finished. Is never really gone, Jinho replied. Sometimes it just needs someone stubborn enough to hold its bow steady when everything else is shaking. Young soldier Deho came running up to the observation deck, his face bright with excitement. Captain, come quickly. You're going to see this. They followed him to the communication center, where Hunhua was monitoring long-range sensors. On his screen was a display showing dozens of signals from across the galaxy. What are we looking at? Minji asked. Planetary songs, Hunwu said. With wonder in his voice, worlds that have been silent for years are starting to sing again. It is like they heard what happened here and decided to find their own voices. The display showed a growing network of musical signals spreading from world to world, system to system. Each planet had its own unique song, but they were all connected by common themes of life, hope, and determination. It is a choir, Yunji whispered. The galaxy is becoming a choir. Jinho nodded, his eyes bright with the joy of discovery. And this is just the beginning. There are millions of worlds out there, each with its own story to tell. You'll spend lifetimes learning too. Hear them all. Minji looked around at the humans and Valkyrians working together, building something new and beautiful from the ashes of war. She thought about the future that was opening up before them, full of songs yet to be heard and friends yet to be made. Thank you, she said to Jinho, for coming when we called, for showing us that hope is not just about believing things will get better, but about making them better. Thank you for calling, Jinho replied, and for teaching us your world song. It is one of the most beautiful we have ever heard. Outside, the stars were coming out, and somewhere among them, other worlds were learning to sing. The galaxy had become a little less dark, a little less lonely, and a little more full of hope. The new dawn had begun.